Let's have some fun. Thanks for coming out.
Absolutely.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 2 Degrees podcast brought to you by the Play On Foundation. Today's guest, I'm thrilled to have her on not only because she's an incredible artist, but because I actually had the pleasure of enjoying her in concert alongside a few other talents over in Oakland. So, everybody, Raquel Lilly. Good afternoon, good evening. What's going on? How's
Hi.
the day?
It's been productive. Went to the dentist and now I'm unpacking from pretty much 2 months of nonstop travel.
How was the flight back? When did you officially fly out?
Uh, well, I spent a month in Miami promoting my album and working alongside Andres Daza at Electric Air Studios all of February and doing collabs with Cannibal Kids to promote our tour in February, so February 1st. And then I came back March 1st. And then I was here for about a week to play 2 shows in Birmingham and Atlanta. And then I went on tour on the 7th. I did straight band rehearsals for 3 days and then I went on tour.
That's insane. With that, first of all, I'm curious to know how that relationship with Cannibal Kids formed.
So around my birthday of last year, I spontaneously streamed at my friend's studio, Andres, who owns Electric Air. And he's like, yeah, have the stream at my studio. It'll be fun. I'll get a bunch of musicians. And at first I was like, I could totally do this solo. It's fine. Like, we don't have to like bring a bunch of other people on, but he insisted and he's like, no, I need you to meet this one guy. He's incredible. I think you're going to love his music. And so he showed up at the session as a bassist, actually. So he pretty much like was a hired gun, backed my band, or backed me rather, with this like put together band. It wasn't Cannibal Kids. It was just him and a bunch of interns that Andres had. Yeah, we've been friends ever since.
Mm-hmm. Are they also from Atlanta?
They're from Miami.
Okay. And right now you're back in Miami or Atlanta?
Atlanta.
Gotcha.
Atlanta.
Man, the way I described Cannibal Kids to my friends when I heard them was like a cross between the Bee Gees, Weezer, and Jonas Brothers.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Like they're just a fun group to collab with. So then originally your tour was just supposed to be you, and then all of a sudden it was like, yeah, let's go with these guys as well.
Yeah, well, it was more like since birth, I've just wanted to do a West Coast tour to promote the album once it released. Like that was always the plan. And I always wanted to get somebody else to co-tour with me.
Okay.
Since I had never really been on a band tour. And Cannibal Kids, they're veterans of the road. So it just, because I was like so into their music, I'm like genuinely into their music. I was like, man, it would be amazing to have you guys tag along. If it were up to me, I would have had like another band with us, but 10 people was already enough. So, we stopped at asking just them.
And then for your band, are these longtime friends or were these like musicians for hire for this tour?
They're longtime friends. I mean, Mark, our drummer, I'd known him on Twitch for years, but I've never actually like really hung out with him in real life. We met once at a Twitch party at TwitchCon, and our interaction was brief. So, you barely get to know somebody that way. But basically I have a band at home. Martin has been a longtime friend for like 7 years now, 6 years. And we've been making music ever since. I mean, he started off as a hired gun, but he evolved into a co-producer, a co-writer in my projects. And Jacob, same thing. He's been there since pretty much day one. He was a gun for hire and kind of just coalesced into the project. Brian, who is typically my drummer, he's my go-to guy. we play most of our shows with him. He was on tour with another band and he couldn't really get out of it. So I was really devastated to learn that, but it gave us the opportunity to work with another Twitch musician who was magnificent. And he hopped on the tour, smiling face, great energy, amazing drummer. So it all worked out.
Nice. And then what about the other two that were also on the bill for that evening? Were they there for the whole tour as well? Was it Nick and...
Nick was only there for 2 dates, and then Matt Walden, who I don't think was at the show that you saw, he was in Seattle, and he was just for that one show.
Gotcha. Nice.
Yeah.
I just found that I didn't expect that evening to turn out the way that it did. Just because I, one, haven't been to a live show in so long. And so I thought it was going to be just like a nice chill thing, but then you guys brought heat that evening and made it a really enjoyable night. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So what is your relationship with marijuana?
Great question. I definitely am an avid user. I go through phases. So I can drop weed for a month and not even think about it. But also I could smoke every day and it'll be part of like my routine for a while. So it really depends on the circumstance, where I'm at, what I'm doing. Obviously it's more accessible in legal states. So when I'm on the West Coast and there's a dispensary next door, I don't even think twice. Like I just buy a pack of J's and I'm chief in every, rest stop. But as far as just like the daily, I'm not really, I used to smoke every day. Like I said, I go through phases. Like I can't say I habitually do something, but I go through phases.
Have you ever used it like creatively? Because I know some artists who are like, I only whenever I'm writing songs or whatever, it's like I'll...
For sure. Yeah. Creatively, meditatively, reflectively, I've used it, for medicinal as well as creative purposes. Mostly, it's pretty recreational, but I find that some of my most creative thoughts flow from just smoking a J. I don't purposely like smoke and then write a song or anything. Usually I'm pretty stone cold sober when I'm writing, but it's not always the case. Sometimes writing is super spontaneous. I could be on mushrooms or smoking a joint, and then something comes out of me,
Fair. Do you, or can you tell the difference of your style of performance or of your writing from sober to smoking?
I've been told that people can't tell when I'm high. So I don't think I don't think there's much of a difference. Maybe depending on the strain, I'm a little more introverted. Like I'm a lot more introspective.
Yeah.
Or like I really like to people watch. But also sometimes I can get in a really engaged conversation and be really talkative.
No, that was fun to be in a venue. And it's funny too, because like we had a little exchange too, talking about how you need to find a venue that allows, smoking to happen. And then what was that conversation
Not
like?
always. Honestly, it was more like ask for forgiveness. Permission comes later. Neither. So I did that first at my LA show. Originally the idea, so on my track Mary, there's like a sample of me hitting a bong, and like there's the bubbles and stuff that come from it. So I just thought it'd be really funny if we brought like a road bong. But I'm like, that's just so much. Like it could be glass. Like it's only gonna be cool if it's like giant 2-foot glass thing. But like it's a lot. And something that's a little bit more portable and handheld is a joint. So I think it evolved into like, who's got a joint here? And it became like, since day one of tour, I was like, man, I'm gonna do this every single show.
Because like I've always found that so fascinating where I'd be in a venue and it'd be the most unsuspecting venue, and then all of a sudden it turns into a smoking venue. And I've always been curious to know how it evolves to that. It's like, do you talk to the bar manager? Do you, go to the
Oh
venue and
no,
say,
I didn't say shit.
fair, fair, no, that's fair. Was there any repercussions after that?
There was only one venue that was not cool with it. And the only reason why I didn't smoke the joint, like someone handed me a joint on stage and I was like about to light it. But then like the manager came over and he's like, please do not do that. And they were like one of the better venues we worked with. So I just didn't want to ruin my relationship. And I was like, okay, well, theoretical light. I'll just smoke this later.
Okay,
So
fair.
like, I'm really, really sad that that happened. But
Hmm.
I think in any other circumstance, I have a pretty ID gaff attitude and I would have just lit it. But I just, I
Yeah,
definitely want to like come back and,
yeah. Oh man, now I kind of feel bad for just like jumping on board. I just saw you light up and I was like, "Oh, we're doing this." All right, and I just pulled out my joint and just lit up.
yeah, amazing. And that's kind of what I wanted to inspire is
Fair. Well, you did the
a hate
job.
of smokers.
Oh man. Um, so you shared a story on your Instagram, and I was hoping we can relive that right now. And it was at the end, like one of the last stops where your truck got broken into and
Yeah, the van
everything.
got broken.
So start from that moment of like unloading for me, please.
Yeah, so we were playing our last show. It was Portland, and right when we got there, it was high stress because it was in the middle of the city. There were a lot of in Portland. There's a big homeless population. Unfortunately, a lot of them are like younger people that look like you and I that you wouldn't even think are homeless, but you look down and you see they don't have shoes, and it's the only way you can like really tell.
Mm.
So you have to be careful with who you interact with, their intentions, etc. So we pull up to the venue, high traffic area. We don't know where to park. The clock's ticking. Typically venues give you hours for unloading, sound check, getting your shit together before the show.
Mm.
This venue gave us literally a fraction of what other venues usually give us. And that's because they have like clientele. It's a hotel. The venues just, their policies were pretty strict, and they don't typically deal with like full bands like what we were kind of, road tripping with. Um, on top of the fact that we have a stream set up that we need time to kind of put together. Anyways, I digress. Right when we pull up, there are these people fishy, but I figured, we're in Portland. This is what I know about the city. A lot of young kids running around like asking for money and are just generally homeless. And they were just talking, and like kept trying to grab our attention as we were unloading. So in retrospect, we think that that's when the robbery happened because we did park our car in a pretty secure location and locked everything and checked everything and made sure all the doors were closed. However, in the rush of things, we didn't notice any of our things missing. Like I didn't immediately, I remember thinking during the unloading, I was like, man, I can't find my purse. Like it's got to be somewhere, you don't think like someone stole it immediately. And we play the show. When I get off stage, I get an alert on my phone saying like, oh, you got like a fraud thing. And I didn't think much of it. I'm like, oh, whatever. Like it's probably a mistake. And then Damien from Cannibal Kids, the lead singer, also gets a fraud alert. And both of us are like, oh God. So after the show, we're packing up. We also have like 30 minutes to pack up. So we didn't even have time to like really think about this alert. And I'm frantically looking for my purse. I'm asking everybody. And I'm like, hey, keep a lookout. And we're looking in the van and my purse is just missing. So I was like, shit, like I lost my purse. Someone must have snagged it at the venue. I spent like an hour probably going around the restaurant and the bar and the venue, just trying to see if it was anywhere. And then we actually like went through the credit card report or the credit card and the transaction was like down the road. So we're like, okay, shit, like maybe we could like see if there's camera footage or something. So we actually like go there to no avail. No one can help us. It's already been hours since my purse has gotten stolen at this point. And so we kind of give up and we're like, shit, like it's just a loss. I'm going to cancel my credit cards. Damien notices his backpack's missing. So we're, searching for that. So we're like, dude, like someone must have like broken in the van. So now we're freaking out. We're super defeated. We can't find it anywhere. He got the same charges at the same place. So then we pull up to the Airbnb.
Do you know what the charge was? Like what they bought or what?
It was like $300 at Safeway, like $100 at 7-Eleven. It's just like some degen shit. Like,
damn, yeah. They're
not going to the Apple store or anything. They're just going to the supermarket, probably buying like cough syrup and whatnot.
Yeah.
I immediately dispute the cards and all that. And we're driving to the B&B super deflated. My whole band's like trying to make jokes and like trying to cheer us up because it is the last day of tour. Everybody just had shots and everyone's celebrating. Damien and I are super distraught. Like it sucks. Like the leaders of the band are the ones that got shit on. And we lost a ton of money. Like one of the venues like paid us in cash and like we couldn't do shit about it. Like it's a loss.
Yeah.
So we get to the B&B, we're getting our suitcases out, and I'm just like, my suitcase is missing. But instead of being like, shit, I was smiling, and everyone's like, what? And Damien's like, my suitcase is missing. And I was like, you know what I had in that suitcase is an AirTag. So I pull up my phone, and like, honestly, like, typically I AirTag everything. Typically I have an AirTag in my purse, which are attached to my car keys, but I didn't have my car keys. So I was like, shit, I can't find my purse ever again. But this was the saving grace, is that they took everything. Or we assumed that whoever stole my purse also stole the other shit. So we're like, let's get justice back. We turned into vigilantes that night. We're driving to the address, and lo and behold, it takes us to the Portland Inn.
Wow.
And it is the most, and I mean this in the most literal sense, in that it was a crackhead den. Like there were people just like, outside, like being sketch. People are walking out with meth marks on their face, track marks everywhere. Like it's just sketch. Like the lobby owner definitely is on drugs too. Like, and he refuses to say anything about seeing anyone with suitcases. And he's just like, I don't know nothing. He knows what's going on there.
Yeah.
So I pull out my phone. I've never really tracked an AirTag down, but it is so hyper specific. Like it tells you exactly when your AirTag, like it, first of all, it told me that my bag was near me. So like bingo already. It's like, we found the place. Now we just have to go on the treasure hunt. So I pull out my phone and it's telling me like 10 feet, 20 feet, to your left, 5 feet in front of you, like 2 feet. And so we're just walking around the motels.
Accurate.
It's that accurate.
Oh, shit.
And while we're doing this, there are doors at the motel that are like ajar, and you see people selling stolen items. Like this place is probably like, this is probably a hub for other people to like buy stolen goods. Yeah. Someone was out there like asking us if we wanted to go buy some merch from their, like, they're like, hey, you want to come in and see? And I'm like, man, they probably have some of my shit. But it was so sketch. Like this guy had meth marks all over his face. Like his girlfriend or whatever was strung out, just like going like this by the door. And it's just like, it's not a place that you want to hang out in. It's, the motel is surrounded by only a McDonald's and strip clubs. So just to kind of give you an idea of what this space looks like, not a great area. Not to mention it's like midnight at this point, and we have to wake up at like 6 a.m. to get to the airport to drop our guys off.
Wow. And
so time is ticking. We called the police while we were on our way to let them know, like, hey, we're gonna go reclaim our stuff. We need backup, like in case something goes wrong.
Yeah.
So the police is like, we don't know when we're gonna get there. So we're like,
funny,
shit, dude, like we have
Batman,
to go.
So then all I'm thinking is just like a real Batman scenario where it's like, we're gonna go solve this. And if you want to be there when we solve this, just backup would be nice.
That's exactly what it was. It was vigilante shit. So we get there and so my tour manager's walking around like assembling a council of crackheads, like we're just watching him go around to all the individuals in the parking lot, asking them information and trying to see, like, did you see anything suspicious? And everybody there was like, oh, Joe, like Joe steals shit all the time. He's in that room. And right when he was finding that stuff out, we walked past him and we're like, hey, it's room 313. And everyone's like, yeah, that's Joe's room. So like, not only did my phone tell me it was that room, but everybody else around him was like, Joe stays up there with his girlfriend.
Joe.
Fucking Joe. So, Damien and I go back to the van. We're calling the cops. We're like, hey, we're thinking, like, we know where the room is. We just want to update you guys. Like, this is what we're going to do. So as we're calling the cops, Andres knocks on the door and we're just like, my jaw's open. I'm like, oh my God, like the cops aren't here yet. Like, are we engaging right now? And the door opens. A guy, Joe, answers it. And at that point, I grabbed Damien by the fucking chest and I was like, dude, we gotta go. We gotta go. So we sprint up to the 3rd floor. And as the door's opening, as Daz is walking in, Joe's like, just come in and take it. And I was just livid. Like, my blood was boiling because I was like, even before we got there, I'm like, when I found out there was a location, I was like, I'm about to beat a bitch. Like, I was aggro as hell. So I was already like really mad. Damien's already really mad. Daza's the only one that's like, we mean no harm. Like, I have no weapons. We just want to get her stuff. He's very zen. Like, he's like Doctor Strange. I don't know how he convinces people, but like, he's very zen. And so we walk right in and how do I describe this place? It's the mustiest, smoke-filled. It smells like stale cigarettes and body odor. And Damien's like show jackets that you probably saw him perform in were hanging up on the walls. Our stickers were just like everywhere. Our tour posters were ripped on the floor.
Damn.
My shoes were like put out on the counter like it was a crackhead garage sale. Just random items of ours just like sprawled about. So at this point, I am just like in shock at how organized this was. And my suitcase, both of our suitcases were just like vomiting our clothes on the bed. Like they were, you know, every single piece of clothing we had was looked at. Mm-hmm. Lo and behold, Joe's girlfriend. So Joe looks like a stout, like kind of definitely on drugs. Like, he was definitely tweaking out. He's like a redhead, kind of balding, older dude. Maybe he's in his 40s. Like, reeks of cigarettes, looks like he's up to no good. And he's very like, just take it. Like, we don't know anything. We don't know anything that happened. And I'm just like, shut the, I'm just telling him like, don't look at me. Don't talk to me. Shut up. His girlfriend walks out. It's like a skinnier black woman, definitely tweaking too. Cause she's like freaking out. Her eyes are humongous. And she's like, we don't know anything about any of this stuff. Like, she's shook. Like, she's just seen a ghost. Like, our literal tour posters are on the floor, ripped up. Like, they knew who we were. So the fact that me and Damien walked in, they're like, holy shit. Like, they didn't know what to do. And she's like, we don't know anything. So like, we're telling her to shut up. And they're like, oh, I knew this was a bad idea, but you guys have really good taste. And at that point, I'm like a volcano spewing. And so I start yelling at this girl. I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like, sit your ass down. Do not look at me. Don't talk to me. Don't touch anything. And she just keeps yapping away, and she's just tweaking. She's tweaking. Joe is kind of getting nervous. He's like, don't call the cops, man. Don't tell on us, man. And Andres is like, listen, like, give us our credit cards. Give us our ID back. We're having to travel in the morning. That's all we want. And they're like, we don't have that stuff. So it became apparent that they didn't have any of our cards. Yeah. They handed us our wallets. And we looked through our shit, and they didn't have anything. So at this point, Daz is like, the cops are on their way. You better tell us where it is. And at this point, it escalates. Joe freaks out that the cops are on their way. He pushes out of the room. The drummer Luke from Cannibal Kids is standing at the door tanking. And he's just like, you're not going anywhere. He pushes Luke, and Luke pushes back. They get into an altercation. This guy punches Luke in the face and runs, and Joe jolts. Luke's chasing after him. We're all like, Luke, it's not worth it. Do not chase him. So he stops, comes back. At this point, all of us are livid. So we're just ransacking this place, flipping the fucking bed. throwing our garbage on the floor, finding my humidifier in the Carl's Jr. bag that is half eaten. And we retrieved most of the stuff. A bunch of stuff are missing, like including my credit cards and my ID, the important things. Yeah. But it did get my wallet back and my purse back, oddly. So we get out of there, we retrieve everything. And as we're peeling out, the cops show up finally.
Wow.
And we file a police report.
If you were to say how long it took from the time you called them initially on the way there to when they showed up.
Oh, at least an hour. They took hella long. And I don't think they responded. Finest. We were lowest totem pole because they don't care about crimes, petty crimes like that. But our friends updated them and said, hey, like someone just got punched in the face. And I think that's what kind of put us up on the assault, put us up a little higher. So they showed up, we filed a police report, they knock on the door, no answer, of course. So at the end of the day, had we not done what we done, we wouldn't have gotten our stuff, because if they saw, the minute they would have seen the cops, they wouldn't have answered the door for anybody.
Yeah. Wow.
So.
Well,
and that's the story.
That is a great way to end a tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, I'm happy y'all are safe. How's Luke's face?
Luke was fine. That guy didn't know how to punch, so.
Gotcha. That's good.
It was sloppy. Yeah.
Man. All right. Well, I think that is a great segue into what is art to you? No, but like for real, where it's like it's fascinating to be at that type of altercation and incident, and it's stemming from, your art essentially. You went on a tour, and not to say, well, that's tour life for you, but it's like that wouldn't have happened if you weren't who you were. So with that, like let's take it back to what made you want to get into music in the first place.
I've always been a singer since I was little. That's kind of the way I've always expressed myself.
Now, when you say that, is that because you're Filipino and everybody around you and karaoke machines were like a thing?
Yes, but also if you asked me when I was young what I wanted to be when I grew up, I always said I want to be a singer. So it's always been like a weird childhood dream that I've, kind of turned into my craft at this point. So to answer your question, what is art for me? I mean, it's my entire life. It's what gives me meaning and purpose. It's what drives me every day. It's my business. It's what keeps me creative. It's what keeps me in business. It's what generates income for me. So it's so much. And it is the driving force of most major decisions in my life.
With that then, is it all focusing on music, or do you also paint or do photography or act or any other art?
If I had the right resources, time and all that, I think I'd be a really good actress. I don't even know how to begin to dive into that world. I'm mostly a musician. I was very inclined in painting and drawing too. I was among top of my class in art all the time. I competed in it in school. I actually thought I was going to go to art school, but weirdly, I went to
compete in art at school.
They had like county contests, I guess. Like they'd give you a theme to do any sort of visual art, whether it's photography or painting or drawing. And I would submit to these county competitions, which would turn into state competitions, all that stuff. So I would always place, like every time I submitted something, I'd always place, but I never really took it further than that, just competing like that. I paint like very rarely, but if I could retire tomorrow, one of the things that I would do and spend time with is painting for sure.
Yeah. Nice. With that then, so was it guitar that was your immediate love, or are other instruments also in your repertoire?
I was obsessed with Beatles growing up, and their main instruments and like their main kind of like sound was this guitar rock. So I think
Mhm.
that's what kind of inspired me to write songs just like them. You know, pick up a guitar and be able to hold a like a riff down while singing was always something that I aspired to do as a young person.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't think guitar was my first love, although I did really get into it in high school. I didn't really have any formal training. I wish I did. Like looking back, I really wish that someone had given me direction and said like, look, you have great skills, like you need to put this into like an educational, you know, like you need to supplement this with some education. But for me, like I was just learning, practicing. I was practicing like 3 to 5 hours a day just because I wanted to.
Yeah.
And I got really good at metal guitar. I was actually
Nice.
in metal bands. And what really put me as a frontman, I never really wanted to be like a frontman of a project or anything. Like I was always put in those positions. But one day a band needed a singer, a
Hmm.
screamer, really, and I just like decided to do it because I'm like, I know how to sing. I bet I can learn how to scream. And you know,
Yeah.
I've written songs before. Like this shouldn't be that hard. So for years, I was actually in metal bands, and I didn't develop guitar as much until I got to college when I couldn't really bring an amp and stuff. So I brought
Hmm.
my acoustic guitar, started writing softer music. And that kind of developed me into the artist I am today. When I pick up a guitar and write a song front to back, it's usually done on guitar. And the only difference is like this sort of genre that I'm pursuing.
What then would you classify your genre of music?
I would say definitely pop, like definitely indie, definitely pop, but somewhere between the spectrum of jazz, soul, and R&B.
Hmm. Um, what then is your opinion on the definition or the state of R&B today? Because I feel like there's so much more categories, or so many more artists that seem to be in this category, but if they were in the 90s, it wouldn't be R&B.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. R&B today, I feel like if you pick an R&B playlist on Spotify, whether it's like indie R&B or like, you know, soul R&B, it's definitely not like, I feel like 90s R&B is a very like it's its own thing.
Hmm.
And a lot of my influence in my current album definitely stems from 90s R&B and like Bruno Mars sort of like R&B pop. But I think a lot of like alt R&B these days it's kind of like, I don't know, cheesy. It's on the cheesy side, especially lyrically. Like I feel like that's kind of what separates me is like I don't really write R&B lyrics per se. It's a lot
Hmm.
of like, you know, I do include riffs and runs and stuff, but it's not just like sex vapid lyrics or like,
Yeah.
you know, it's not just about the vocal runs, and it's not just about talking about getting down. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, and that's not to say like all R&B is like that, but a lot of it is kind of like, it's not lyrically driven. And
Hmm.
I think that's where like my other sensibilities come in, where it's like not just R&B, it's like soul, it's jazz, it's pop, because a lot of my songs are lyrically driven for sure.
So with jazz then specifically, did you ever have training for that? Because I know jazz is a very there's a lot to jazz that's very technical, as well as it is very freestyle. So what's your upbringing with jazz?
I actually just listened to a lot of jazz growing up as my parents listened to smooth jazz and other forms of jazz on the radio. So it's funny because I fought all my life. Like I've always been like this rock chick. Like I've always
Hmm.
been like a rocker. Um, Especially my family. Like everybody's always been into R&B and jazz. So I feel like those genres have just been like melted into my brain since like I was young. And I never really had formal jazz training. I mean, if I could go back, go to school and realize what I've done, like in my career, I definitely would have gone to school for music because I think it'd be handy right now.
Yeah.
But I didn't. And everything that I know about jazz is just ear training and listening to hours and hours of music.
Fair. No, that's training is just experience anyways. So with that, like if you're submersing yourself and you're teaching yourself, then you're still acquiring a lot of that experience and knowledge. So keep that up for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So based off the fact that you're Filipino, I'm curious to know how that transitioned from, and like the interactions and the support from your parents after you told them that this was going to be your thing.
Well, I was always told that music it's not something you should pursue as a career.
Yeah.
It's not viable. It's a hobby.
Yeah.
And you need to find a job so that you can support your hobbies. So because my family's pretty strict on that, I went to school for biology, something that I wasn't intrinsically good at, because I figured if I'm going to spend so much time learning about something, I wanted to do something that I'm not naturally inclined in, because I always felt very artistically inclined, very musically inclined. I'm definitely a creative, but I always felt like one of my shittiest subjects in school was science. So I went to school for science to be better.
And you went to biology?
So I went to biology and I aced it. Like I graduated with a degree in neurobiology, physiology, and behavior. So
whoa.
Yeah. So and I graduated from UC Davis, so it's like a legitimate school that graduates scientists all the time. and so like I think like if there's a takeaway from what I did, ignoring all the student debt that I've accumulated and the piece of paper that was super expensive to obtain, I gained so much confidence in the fact that I'm like not this dumb creative. Like I think growing up, I always felt like I wasn't good at math, science, and all that, but I was always good at writing and music and art. So now I don't have that insecurity. Like I'm confident in a room that I could have an intelligent conversation about any science topic and know a lot about it. And of course, it's funny because like the thing that I went to school for became my hobby. Like on my free time, I love listening to science podcasts, keeping up with like biochemistry and nutrition, and it feeds into a lot of my other hobbies. Like I'm a plant mom. I'm super obsessed with mushrooms, and like it really helps having that science background to really understand my other hobbies, I guess.
Fair. No, that's fascinating. And so like with this podcast too, I started a charity, and that's the main plug with this, is to kind of redirect traffic in the direction of the charity, and it focuses on neurological research and brain aneurysm awareness, detection, and prevention. And so neurology has always been a little niche subject that I always try to explore whenever I have time. So that is dope. How long were you in school for that?
4 years.
Wow. And you're doing nothing with it other than
I worked at the hospital for a little bit afterwards, but all the jobs that you can get in neurobiology are either research or like you become a tech in some lab that does testing for neuro disorders like carpal tunnel or neuropathy, ALS, and I was one of them. I became a cog in the wheel in the hospital force, and it just wasn't. While I was doing that, I was trying to support my career and trying to do all these creative endeavors, but I found that like whenever I needed to take off to like go play the news show that everybody watches every morning, no one was happy for me. Like everyone was almost like spiteful that I got to like do that, or like I don't know, maybe everybody was like not happy about their positions in life or whatever, that they couldn't find happiness in others. But that was totally like the flow of the place, and it just was so creatively stifling. I'd go home and I wouldn't even want to like be creative because I was just drained of my energy. And when I was working there, I found that the most that I got out of that job was sitting next to the patients and talking to them about my music. And all of them wanted to hear my story, hear and listen to my music as a result. And I met a lot of really amazing people who helped me along the way, let me stay at their houses if I ever had to like go out of town and like play a show or a festival. Like my old patients would like help like house my stay and like make me breakfast. It was really cool. Make me and my band breakfast. And little connections like that. And I realized I'm like, if I could do this in a grander scale where like this is what I'm pursuing, this is what I'm doing, it'd be incredible. So yeah, I think I took sort of a leap of faith and left the hospital because it was so strict. I decided to learn how to run a business. I was a paralegal for like a hot minute for this private lawyer. And that's how I learned how to run a business. I learned how to run his business. I was essentially doing everything from accounting to desk management to going to court with him to reading papers and understanding what all this jargon meant. And that really fueled me into this businesswoman that I am today in my own career. So all the little experiences that I gained kind of helped propel who I am in my own business platform today.
Yeah. I'm eager to dive into that, talking about your business and how you manage that, and diving into the online world of Twitch. But before that, whenever I'm speaking with anybody and they're sharing moments of taking a leap of faith or a big transitional part of their life, it's usually tied into some kind of depression or emotional, use the word stifling, where it's like people are emotionally stunted in the life that they're leading and they need to get out of it. So I'm curious to know if you had to have some kind of emotional transition and what that was like, going from a secure, stable job to something as lucrative as being an artist.
Yeah. So right around the time that I became a Twitch streamer, I was just pretty unhappy with where I was in life. I'd also sort of recently like had a fallout with my family. I got into, so kind of long story short, I found out that some of my family members stole my credit and basically just sent me through a tailspin of like uncovering all this like family drama that revolved around it, and years and years and years of just this like all these mysteries, like where does this money come from, how come we've been able to afford this and that, and like my dad was the kingpin, and I like had unraveled this and it kind of just flipped my life upside down. And so kind of having that piece of information, and he also wasn't in the best of health. In 2017 he passed away, and it put me in this like really strange emotional space of like, what do I do with this energy? Like, where can I go from here? How can I dig myself out of debt? And how can I use what I have and like enable people to be creative themselves, because it's literally the only thing that kind of kept me going. And I chose to be a streamer because I was gaming so much. That was my escape from the hell that I was in. Okay. And I started streaming on Twitch because I was like, okay, well, I can game and promote my music at the same time. And I would karaoke these songs while I was gaming. And I kind of just started streaming myself playing guitar and singing just because, like, I don't know, I didn't have anything better to do. And that's kind of what built my audience to begin with. And that's so the idea of like becoming this musician on the internet was completely kind of by accident and like not very planned. And then the more people requested me to stream that sort of content, the more I dove into it. Eventually I started touring. I got really lucky. I was able to quit my job from the lawyer really fast because I had the opportunity to tour from college to college. And something about colleges is that they have a budget that they work with.
Yeah,
so it paid
yeah.
really well.
I learned that
They
this
housed,
year because like I have a comedian friend, and when everything started going
yeah,
online, like he pretty much introduced me to the knowledge of when colleges or universities invite you for a show, you say yes.
yep, yep. And I did the NACA circuit. So if you know anything about the NACA circuit, it's basically a bunch of schools that come together during a conference, and all these vouched for artists that belong to these booking agencies, which I was a part of, showcase talent. And it's very, very, very competitive. So you have to like pay to even apply. And like the applications are not cheap. So if you don't get in, it's just a loss of money. But I was really lucky in that I was very competitive, and I would tour for 2 to 3 months at a time and I would make bank. But that's not really where I wanted to take my music, and my online career was really blossoming. And I figured like the best thing I could do for myself is to stay home and like just develop that. And so that's what I've been doing for the past 5 years. And it allowed me to write more, to create an album. And now I'm at a position where I could continue to make music because I've built this fan base that are hungry for more, more, more. And I think I'm at a point where if I release a single, like people are going to be really excited about it. Whereas 5 years ago, I didn't really have that. So it's really cool to be able to harness what I've made and not have to rely on like a record label to help me do it.
Nice. And so with that, how do you keep a balanced head and not let, yourself get lost in, oh, I got to make music for people now because they're listening, and oh, I got to jump on this opportunity. How do you center yourself?
I think self-care is, even though like I'm pretty spontaneous when it happens, depending on how busy I am, I think self-care is something that is like a staple of mine. So I start with like, you definitely need to have some sort of physical activity. Like you can't just sit all day because it's so easy to do that, especially if your job's on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to take care of your body. You have to eat well. I don't eat junk. Like I cook a lot. I love to cook. So that's another hobby of mine. So I feed my body really well. I treat my body really well. And you have to know when to take breaks because your body's going to tell you when. So yeah, I think that's like kind of how I keep a steady head on my shoulders, is you have to treat yourself well.
You brought up an interesting aspect of self-care, and it's taking breaks. And every person that I've spoken to has had to unfortunately learn that the hard way, where they crashed to some degree. I'm curious if you crashed and if you're willing to share what that experience was like for you.
I'm sort of, I wouldn't call myself burnt out right now, but I'm definitely like strung out from like working so hard the past few months of just promoting. And I was actually going to take this whole week off to just develop my stream and like get back into the swing of things, clean my house and all that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying yes for this.
Yeah, absolutely. I knew it wasn't going to, take super much, a lot of my time. So, and I figured it was going to be a fun conversation. But yeah, I definitely have crashed, and it's been the result of like pushing myself and getting sick because of it. So that's, I don't really have like a crazy story as to like, oh yeah, I crashed and burned this one time, but it's mostly like it always ends up in sickness, and that's when your body's like trying to force you to stop and force you to slow down. So
do you recall like what you were busy doing that made you that exhausted?
So yeah, I mean, I'd say like coming off this tour, like I could have kept touring for like another month or two. Like it was giving me life, but I was definitely neglecting my sleep towards the end, just because like all the things that we didn't have planned out were just like So like getting robbed by crackheads, you know, we were supposed to get sleep that night. And the plan was like, the show was going to end early. We're going to go to the B&B, get a good night's sleep, and drop the boys off to the airport. Cause we had to wake up at like 5 a.m. So instead of that, you know, we got like 2 hours of sleep because my adrenaline was going, and we didn't get home till like 3 a.m. So
That's funny.
things like that, just like things like that happen on tour where you're planning, and you're having the best time, but sleep is definitely a commodity. So yeah, also like things like going to TwitchCon, you know, you want to, it's crazy because the con happens all day. And then when you get out at 5, you get dinner, but then the parties, like there's like Delgato parties, there's like the Corsair parties, there's the Streamlabs parties, and you have to go to network. And my trick is to never drink at these parties. Like I'm not a big drinker in general anyway, but that's kind of like how I prevent myself from like burning out super hard, because like drinking makes you dehydrated. It makes you kind of loopy, you forget things, you lose things easily, you get sloppy. Also, the drinks are free at these parties, so like I try, like if I'm invited to a party like that where I know I have to network, I'm very like business mindset. Like I can't just go to party even though that's what people are here to do. So yeah, like I said, like self-care is just always like top of the totem pole for me.
Nice. No, that's fair. That's beautiful. So now with that, going online and your immersion into the world of Twitch, as an artist before realizing the online market was as massive as it is, did you ever expect it, or even now has the reality hit that all of this is online?
I think the reality only hits at certain points. Like during the pandemic, Twitch put together this giant concert series with like John Legend, Ellie Goulding, Barry Gibb, Garth Brooks, like all like these humongous names. And I got to be one of the 2 Twitch musicians to play on the same bill, which was insanity. And Barry Gibb opened for me, and then Garth Brooks played after me. So it was like things like that happen is what reminds me that like this thing is bigger than just saying that I'm a streamer on the internet. That there's this potential for this massive gathering of people, despite it not being in front of you in real life. But yeah, I think it only comes in waves. Like most days I'm kind of just like, I'm just on stream. There's 300 people watching, whatever. Like this is my grind. But then some days on stream, I'm like, wow, I'm really lucky to have 300 people watching me right now eating this sushi. Like this is crazy. So I think like it just depends on the day and like my perspective.
Nice. Oh man. Now with that and just deciding to go online and do that, because it's turned into a filter that people can put on, and I found it funny too, just knowing that you used to work at a hospital, so I can say that that's like a transition from going from that type of doctor to Dr. Sex. How did that come about?
So it's funny. I was hanging out with Damien in New York. It was like after a photo shoot of ours to promote our tour. And we were just driving around Brooklyn. And there was this giant billboard that said Dr. Sex, like gigantic.
Where'd the voice come from then? Is that just Brooklyn then?
It's actually, okay, so Cannibal Kids has this thing called bro voice. So like, bro, it like kind of sounds like this. And when they're fooling around, like the bro voice comes out. So like when I saw Dr. Sex, I was just like, man, you must be like the person who made that is so confident that their tag is Dr. Sex. It's hilarious. So then like I don't know, like Damien and I, when you put us together, we just like, we're both creative. So we just like come up with the weirdest shit. So that was just like a normal day hanging out with us. So like we see this thing and we're just like, Dr. Sex. And immediately it's like a Brooklyn voice because we're like driving around in Brooklyn. So I'm like, hey, my name's Dr. Sex. And then like we're just creating this character, and we just start talking like this dude, and it eventually morphs into this thing where he's talking like this, and it's like,
Oh,
okay,
man.
where is Dr. Sex from? He's from Brooklyn for sure. Like he's 47. He's, he only cares about making money, and like we just like start just, I don't know, riffing.
That's
So yeah, so before you know it, we're like, clean your urethras, like I'm the doctor of sex, like just making up just the craziest shit. And I don't know how he even came about. Like, I think like when I dressed up as Dr. Sex,
hmm
it was just like I had this lab coat and I had these steampunk goggles and I just had a mustache. Like the mustache is ripping apart, by the way. It's so like not legit. Like the costume is just so haphazardly put together.
It's all the cunnilingus that Dr. Sex is having. That's why the
Yep.
mustache is
Yep.
faded.
Yep. And it just came together like,
When
just
you were growing up,
does.
did you ever encounter like a TV show or like a late night advert? Because back when I was growing up in Toronto, there was I can't remember her name, but there was this 65-year-old lady, and she had like a midnight show, and she was just talking about sex. But it's like coming from this really old lady, and me, just like a 10-year-old, looking at this, like, interesting that this grandma knows so much about sex. And like she'll have like toy models of like, this is a vagina and these are the fallopian tubes. And then like she'll have guests on and she'll talk about dildos and all this stuff. And it's like, it's just interesting coming from this woman. And then it's like not until you get older you realize, yeah, no, grandmothers also have sex sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I didn't see any late night shows like that, but I've seen my fair share of weird late night shit. It's when like your parents aren't watching and you're like on HBO and you're like, whoa, boobies.
That's so funny. Oh man. Um, Lily, you have graced me with all of this time, and I'm so eternally grateful. And not only are you such an amazing artist, but you're an amazing person. And so thank you so much for coming out. But before I let you go, I do have one more question, and the question is, why cats? Why not dogs?
Well, so many reasons. Where do I begin? Um, I think it's funny because I grew up with dogs and my parents actually hated cats. Like in the Philippines, like they were seen as vermin. Like they were seen as like rats of the street.
Yeah.
I've always loved cats. And I've always felt very like in tune with my friend. Like I'd come over my friends' houses and the cats would always love me. I'm always the one that the cats sleep on, the cats want to interact with. And to this day, like whenever my friends are like, this cat doesn't like anyone, they hate everyone. I'm always the one that like they are like rolling around with. And so I think I don't know, I'm like kind of a cat whisperer. But it's not just cats. I mean, I think I'm really good with dogs as well. Like animals in general, like the reason why I went to biology in school is because I wanted to be a veterinarian, but that wasn't a very like good plan, lucrative job. And I just decided like I'm just gonna keep animals and like not be a doctor that has to, put them down. Like I decided ultimately that wasn't for me. So yeah, cats, like as a musician, like cats are really quiet. They won't bark if there's a car on the road or a mailman coming to your house. Um, I think also just like their independence, their level of independence really aligns with my lifestyle because like if I can't walk you one day, it's not a problem. But if you don't take the dog out, like there's gonna be shit somewhere in the house that you're gonna find later. You know what I mean? So it's like I always say like having a dog is like having a 3-year-old. And I'm just not really interested in like I love dogs, don't get me wrong,
Yeah,
but I would never own one.
that's fair. That's fair. You mentioned
Yeah.
from the Philippines then. So were you born in the Philippines?
I was born in the Philippines. I moved to New York when I was 7.
Wow. What was then? I know I said that was the last question, but just learning that now, I'm curious to know what was that transition like for you then coming from the Philippines and then moving to New York out of all places. And then what was your experience with the cold?
I was told that I was going on vacation. Like I didn't know that I was immigrating.
Wow.
So like I didn't know any better. I was like, oh, we're just gonna be here for a while, and then before you knew it, like that's kind of just where I lived, and that's where I went to school. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess we're staying here for a while. And I didn't really think much of it because I was so young.
Mm,
But yeah, the cold sucked, which is ultimately why I moved down south.
yeah. Oh man. Do you still have like an extra 10 minutes? Because I wanna I have a couple more questions in that aspect.
I don't. I actually have
Okay.
to. I have another phone call. I'm
Fair,
sorry.
fair. Well, if I can get you back here sometime, bring you on maybe on for the next season of shows, then that would be amazing. But I'm so thankful that you came out and glad to have learned something new about you. So thanks
For
again for
sure. Yeah.
coming
Thank
out.
you for your time. Yeah. Thank you.
But everybody, thank y'all for coming out to the 2 Degrees podcast, brought to you by the Play On Foundation. Check out Raquel Lily, and what she's doing, and check out Twitch. I'm not a Twitcher just because I live in this truck and I don't really have that much internet. But with the post that she does share on her Instagram, check out her Twitch streams and lose yourself in her music as well as the wise sage words of Dr. Sex. But other than that, thank y'all for coming out and mag-ingat kayo.